All right, so distance, speed, and time. If you're at home, I apologize that you missed the entire story of how this DST triangle came about. You missed a very exciting story and why I'm so passionate about this DST triangle. You can ask me about it one day during recess or something, and we'll sit there and talk about it. But again, you need to be able to determine and you need to be able to understand all of the different variables of a speed, distance, time equation. Why? So that you can figure out the missing variable, which is the whole thing that we're doing right here. Throughout this whole unit, I'm going to give you, I can't give you just one. That's impossible to figure out the answer. I'm going to give you two variables. I'm going to give you speed, distance, or time with one of those three missing. You saw in class that crazy pre-algebra way of solving this, right? Not a lot of fun. Now, when you get a little older, I do think they are kind of fun because it's like moving puzzle pieces around but still making the puzzle work, which is kind of fun. But for right now, we're not ready for that. So let's do it the easy way. Why not, right? Number one, when you are solving a DST triangle problem, the first thing you should do on every single problem is you need to draw the DST triangle. Now, before you do anything, I want you to put this in your notebook. And I want you to write distance, speed, and time. Don't just put DST. Distance, speed, time. Get that written down in your notebook. As my voice slowly starts to fade away from screaming at Freddie Freeman all last night on the television. Apologies. It's fun watching the Braves win, though. That was awesome. It was definitely fun watching them win. All right. I want you to get this DST written down. Again, basically 3 steps to this. Draw your triangle. Step number 1, right? Draw the triangle. Make sure you put the D, the S, and the T in the right spot. Step number 2, find out what you're missing. Well, this says 100 miles and 2 hours. I'm missing speed, so I kind of cover this up. Don't have to do that on your paper because you want to fill that back in a little bit, right? But I have, if I look in there, once I cover that up, I have 100 over 2. And 100 over 2 can also be read as 100 divided by 2, which we all know is 50. It's not overly difficult. Again, when you get to the second one that we looked at, clear in the annotations. Step 1, draw the triangle. Label it. Step 2, 360 miles. That's 60 miles per hour. What am I solving for? Time. 360 divided by 60 is 6. Is he the only one that gives people any issues whatsoever, except for people that don't put the numbers in the right spot? That's a huge mistake, but it happens. The only one that gives people any they start to question, are they doing the right thing, is a question like this. You draw your triangle. Step 1, you label it. Step 2, you determine what you're trying to figure out. So 75 miles an hour is a speed. 3 hours is a time. Now I have things that are beside each other. When they're beside each other, you multiply. Because you're not over top of each other. When you're over top of each other, you have division, right? These are beside each other, so you don't. 75 times 3 was 225. Good? Not too stressful, I don't think. I know it's a little difficult, but as we go through and practice them, I think you'll be better and better. Let me pause this for now. All right, so again, recording this for the folks that are at home. I know I've got a few people in a couple of the classes that are at home, so they can kind of see what we're doing, so they don't come back to school completely lost. DST triangle. Before I even start to solve, I'm going to draw like my little one down here so I don't forget what it looks like. D, S, and T. Making sure, Nigel, right, that we put things in the right spot. Otherwise, you are in huge trouble. If you don't put the D, the S, and the T in the right spot, all of your answers will be wrong. So I've got this question here. I know it's a DST question, because it talks about speed, distance, and time. Mr. Bowens drove to the mountains to search for Bigfoot. The trip was 135 miles away, Jordan, 135 miles. Is that a distance, a speed, or a time? 135 miles. That's a distance. Okay? 45 miles per hour. Is that a speed or a time? It's a speed. I look inside of here. I have 135 over 45, which is equal to 135 divided by 45. And this is one of those instances I said, you probably need your calculator, right? What is 135 divided by 45? 3. I say in my head, does 3 hours sound approximately correct? That is an hour, that's a time, right? It takes about 3 hours, I guess, to depend on what mountain you're driving to. 3 hours sounds good, and I finished that first problem. Not too bad, right? I go to my next question. It's Mrs. Klein trying out for the Gryffindor team for Quidditch. Distance, speed, time. During her tryout, she flew 52 miles. 52 miles. So, Henry, 52 miles, is it a distance, speed, or a time? 52 miles is a distance. 4 hours, is that a speed or a time, sir? 4 hours. Time. I look inside of my triangle. I have 52 over 4, which is another way of saying 52 divided by 4. Again, I don't know my 4 into 52s because I didn't study that much when I was doing my multiplication facts. How many times does 4 go into 52 if you use your calculator? 13 is correct. 13 miles an hour. That sounds pretty fast to be on a broom, right? Maybe a little faster, I don't know. Maybe. So then we draw our DST triangle. Why am I drawing the DST triangle? Sit still, I don't want to hear that. Mrs. Levy's having dinner with Mrs. Kraft. Mr. Kraft picked her up in his boat and let her and Mr. Levy ride on the tube all the way back to the house. What a long tube ride this is. Mr. Kraft drove the 90 miles. Is that a distance, a speed, or a time? 90 miles. Going 45 miles an hour on the water. Is that a speed or a time? 45 miles an hour. 90 over 45 is the same thing as saying 90 divided by 45. Again, I know this one in my head because I've done this one enough, but you can use your calculator. What is 90 divided by 45? Two hour trip across the lake on a tube. Oh my goodness gracious. I like tubing, but not that much. Kiddos, we had like an 83% accuracy in the class. That's above my goal when we're like on a Friday before a quiz, right? Or a test. Again, I repeat the same thing that I said earlier. Of course, the first day, these are the basic questions. As we move along in the days, Carter, yes, I'm going to increase the difficulty. Yes, there will be multi-step word problems. Much like that first one that we saw when we first started earlier. This is not a hard problem. So I've got object Y. 700 meters, distance, speed, and time in 10 seconds. 700 divided by 10, pretty easy, right? 70. So this one was going 70 meters per second. Object Z. Distance, speed, and time, 500 meters in 10 seconds. 500 divided by 10 is 50. This one's going 50 meters per second. But it says, how much faster was object Y than Z? Well, how much faster is 70 than 50? 20 meters a second. Now, I can guarantee you that the answer key would have looked very similar to this. A, 20 meters a second. B, 50 meters a second. And C, 70 meters a second. Because every single one of those numbers shows up on the board, doesn't it? Rachel, they want you to just answer this. I'm going to do it in red. This is wrong. They want you to get the answer to this and be like, oh, there it is. Right? They want you to get the answer to this one and go, ooh, there it is in the answer. And they want you to skip this. But that's how word problems work, right? They are trying to trick you. And again, when I worked with the people that made the test, they make all the end of grade tests and the benchmarks and stuff when I was taking those science classes after school last year. They said, we put in the misconceptions on every question. That's the first thing we look for. What is the possible misconception? And they're going to put that in as the answers. So that's why when you see, what is an herbivore on a test, it only eats meat and it eats meat and plants is in the answers. Why? Because that's an easy thing to get confused with herbivores, isn't it? Because now you've got all three answers. Eats meat, eats plant, eats both. And you're thinking, crud. They want you to get it confused with carnivore. They want you to get it confused with omnivore, but you are smarter than them, and you answer herbivores only eat plants, and you roll on. But that's the way they write the tests. They sit and talk with each other, and they say, what are the misconceptions? And they put those as answers to purposely make sure that you know what you're doing. So far, so good, right? Hopefully that makes sense for the kids at home. If not, you can get me in small groups when we get back.